Hello, I'm Varian Brandon, and this is episode six of the videos that go along with the Daddy's Request pullover or cardigan, depending on which one you're working. The pattern contains both a pullover version and a cardigan version. We have talked so far. We have worked from the body up. This is a bottom up sweater. Worked from the body up to the underarm of both. From the ribbing up to the underarm on both the body and the sleeves. And then we have put the sleeves all on one needle, sleeve and body all on one needle. And so that we're now getting ready to start the color work, which is the fun part. I like this part, obviously, because it's what I do. I love color work. So just as a brief refresher, color work is what is, and which I call the larger term of working with color, more than one color per round. I don't think I'm the only one, but just so you know, the sort of the overall term for knitting that is worked in with more than one color per row or round, mostly round. Well, no, it's stranded color work, supposed to be per row or round. Let's just leave it at that. Then we'll go into the two larger categories underneath color work are stranded work and intarsia. Intarsia is generally worked flat. It's a single thickness outcome, and so it is more than one color per row because it's worked flat, and that's about as far as I'm gonna get into it for right this second. Stranded work is at least two, sometimes more, but generally only two per row or round, mostly round, because it is easier to see the patterning, facing you. And therefore you have stranded color work. You got that? Stranded color work is mostly broken down into smaller categories, generally by geography. So you have Fair Isle, which is a form of stranded color work. You have some Inuit work on the west coast of the United States. You have what they do. There's some in Peru, but mostly that's kind of intarsia. I'm not an expert on that, so I'm going to just leave it at that. But there is, as far as the Fair Isle sort of version of it, there is Fair Isle, part of the Shetland Islands. The main island on Shetland is in Lerwick. They do a version of stranded color work that is, it takes in a lot of the patterning of Fair Isle, but can sometimes include some of the patterning of Scandinavia, which has its own form of stranded color work that is mostly two colors per round, mostly only two colors in the main body of the garment, with other colors coming in the borders or the sort of the ribbing or the border areas of the sweater, or vest or whatever. That's very broad, and people are going, no, wait, that's not what it is. But anytime I've looked it up, if I do a stranded color work discussion, and the very first episode is a non-definitive definition because everybody has their own version of it. This is just my version of how to break this down, and in my somewhat ordered brain, that's just the way it works. So the couple of things that people get really concerned about when they start stranded color work is how do you start a second color, which we'll talk about in just a second, and how do you get your tension right. And that's also we'll talk about in just a second. So, and one of the things I was going to point out to you, we're going to go to the other camera in just a minute so I can explain those things close up and with larger yarns and that sort of thing. And I guess also show you where I am on my sweater, my cardigan I'm working on, which is in the other room with the other camera, with the other setup. Okay, never mind. So anyway, I've done you a very bad disservice because part of the hardest thing to do is you've got what's called long floats. So with stranded color work, you have the color that you're working with, and then the color that you're not working with is if there are only two colors per round, and usually, as I said, that's the case. The stranded the strand that you are yarn that you are not working is stranded along behind the colors that you are working with. So it is stranded along behind there. That's why it's called stranded color work, because the inside of it is strands. Clever, huh? You know, anyway. But they're also called floats. And one of the things you'll hear colorwork people talk about is catching long floats. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute too in the other room. But I have done you not a disservice, because there is a long distance between this little blip at the end of this little medallion thing. There is 7 stitches between one or the other, and 7 is a pretty long, a long way to go for definitely for worsted weight yarn. Rule of thumb, and you'll see it written, that you catch your float after every 3rd stitch. If anything over than 3 or 4, you need to catch that float in the back so that the strand will not be so long. And the reason you don't want a long float in the back is A, you could catch your hand or your earring or your finger or whatever on those long strands in the back. And let's see if I can do, so you have all of these strands. I'm sure you've seen all this, but you have all of these sort of strands in the back. And if these were really long, you would be catching your fingers on them. So what you want to do is catch them, make them, kind of tack them to the back of your garment somewhere in their long run. And some people say after so many stitches. I usually do it after, if I've got more than 4 stitches, I will catch that float somewhere in those 5 stitches or more. Some people say after they go 5 stitches, and anything over 5 stitches they'll try to catch. I've heard people say it's over an inch, depending on what gauge you're using. So here, that's definitely more than an inch between these two things. So you're definitely going to need to catch that. Now, there are several rounds. There's at least 4 of them that have this long float, and you don't want to be catching the yarn at the same place at every single round. So if I'm catching this between the 4th and 5th stitch on the first time around, when I come back around for these little bit wider parts of the medallion, I don't want to catch that at that same spot. I want to catch it on the 5th or 6th, or the 1st or 2nd, the 2nd or 3rd. And so you kind of vary the way where you catch it, because if you, what's called stacking, stacking your weaving, you can't stack increases either, but, or maybe, forget that. Anyway, you don't want to stack them because it causes tension, and it causes, just trust me, do your best not to stack your catches, and I'll tell you about that. But before I start rambling anymore, let's go in the other room and look at all this close up. And we're going to have a crash course in color work really quickly. And then just know that I have other videos where if you didn't quite get it the way I'm going to do it, and just the way I describe it in just a minute, I describe it again in my tutorials on my website. So check that out too. So, all right. Let's go to the other camera. Before we get into the color work itself, I just want to show you where my sweater is. This is my cardigan. This is the back side of it. You remember that's kind of where I started. We're going through here. So if you were doing a pullover, your start of round should be right there. And you put everything on the back, then you do the left sleeve, then you go across then you go across the front, then you do the right sleeve, and then you're back to start of round. But because this is a cardigan, and we have that steek right down the center, what's these extra strings all over the place? How did that happen? Hold on, 2 seconds, there we go. All right, so this is how I put mine together. My start of round is here, and I did the right front, the right sleeve, the back, the left sleeve, and the left front. And so that's where we are. Put them all together. Now, if you, in the future date, would like to try to put these lice and things in here, just know that I had to adjust some stitches right in here to make this fall right in between both of these. So just so you know. And one of the reasons I did that was to, I also, when you know how when you put it all together, you still have some stitches. I had like, there's 11, not stitches, 11 rounds before I could start the color work. So I therefore had another one of these rounds, so I had to do some adjusting to get all that situated. There's a lot of math involved in that afterwards. But I did the same, it was the same kind of thing I had to do for if you, what we talked about last time was if you did sleeves from a different size than the body. So all I did was I put it all on, adjusted it the way I needed it to for the pattern because of the lice that I was working with. You won't have that if you don't do the lice. And then I figured out what my stitch count was. I adjusted it here somewhere and got back to where I needed to be for the whatever size it was. So I don't remember exactly what I did, but I think I ended up adding a couple of stitches and then to make this work out and then decrease down to get to a multiple of 4 and this stitch count right there. And then as I think I told you, Anyway, I had to make sure that I did the adjustment rounds. Yeah, I think I did tell you adjustment rounds there. So, all right, well, that's that. But let's get started on color work itself. Hold on, I got a little thing over here. Okay, this is a little piece that I've just kind of been playing with. You will notice that it's what I like to knit small circumference with, which is on 2 circs. So half the stitches are on the gold needle, half the stitches are on the, come here, darling, on the green tip needle. So there those are. So you work half, and it's kind of like working a DPN where you work off one needle and then you switch over and get set for those needles. And you'll see that, but we'll work to the end of that. You'll see that happen. What I like to do is set the beginning of the round in the middle of a needle rather than having it on one end or the other, because I think when you're adding, it's just a lot easier to add colors and to do anything you have to do at the beginning of a round when it's in the middle of a needle as opposed to being on the ends. Other people may not think so, but I do. So the first thing you're going to have to figure out is how to add the second color when it's coming in, because that's one of the big questions I get. Are we in focus? Somewhere in there. There we go. So in order to add a new color, it is as easy as just starting to knit with it, So you stick the needle through the loop, through the stitch. You form a loop. There's several ways to do it, and on my website you'll see tutorials on how to do lots of them, but this is the easiest one, is just make a loop as you go, just stick that over like that and pull it through, and you have started with a second color. It is right there. Now, the next thing is holding your yarns. If you are a right-handed knitter, if you are a thrower, a western knitter, then as I say, when I teach this, I let people what's called drop and pick up. Are we gonna, maybe there. Drop and pick up, which means that I've just knitted with the purple one, I drop it, I pick up the turquoise, whatever color that is, and knit with that one. When it's time to work the purple one again, I just drop it and pick this one up. Now, as you go along, you will hear people talk about yarn dominance, and that has to do with which color is over and which color is under. And you'll see that one is sort of on top. If this one was stranded out this way, you'll see that the purple is kind of on top of, above the turquoise below. And if you keep that always that way, because if I could pull on top, Come here. And make that one. It makes a lot of noise, all that drawing it down there, sorry. You'll see now the purple ones the turquoise ones is on top, and it kind of shifts. So there are those that say make sure the under stays under and the over stays over, and you won't have any trouble with yarn dominance. I think if you're just starting out, that's the least of your worries right this second. If you are just consistent and picking it up, I've seen many people, they just pick it up and go, and they have no trouble with that. And if you're a Western knitter, a continental knitter, you can do the same thing. You can, let's at least make the pattern be consistent. Where's the purple one? There we are. And, well, I picked it up from underneath. Let's try it the other way. There we go, just so it's not in the way. You can make those 3 stitches, and when you get done with that, just drop it and pick up the next one. And go on. Okay? That's, and go away. All right, that's just drop and pick up. Okay. Well, obviously I picked up 2 of them there. Yes, I do know what I'm doing. Just is looking through the camera to do this. It's really weird. So, all right, well, you get the point there. The other way to do it is to carry both yarns in. If you are a right-handed knitter or thrower, you carry both yarns in your, and I am not good at this. Carry both yarns in your right hand, and you just throw whichever one, and if you're good enough, you can keep these separated enough to where you can pick it up. I never can do that. I've seen people wrap one around one finger and one around the other, so that when it comes time to go, they just take. You could tell I'm not good at this. Take that and do it that way, and then you have to keep your tension right, which I am just not good at. But there are plenty of people who do it that way. So you can figure that same thing going the other way. I'll just finish this out on this needle, and we'll switch to the other needle. There and there. I'm going to do something I can tell you about later. Don't think you're going to have this trouble, but all right. There you go. We'll talk about what I just did there in just a second. Okay. So what I do, let's try the carrying both yarns in your left hand, is they do this, they separate this out. How they keep them separate, I have no idea, but the people who do this are really good at it. Over different knuckles, maybe. When you pick up the other end of the green. And when you work this, these things just have to kind of hang there and get out of the way. There we are. You go in and you pick that one. Again, there we go. Pick that one. And then when you do the other one, you go underneath and pick that one. Does that make sense? Underneath. Come on, go through. There we go. Underneath the turquoise and pick up the purple. And then over the purple and pick up the turquoise, but I've gotten them twisted again. I am no good at this. So, if you'd like to explore that, don't listen to me. What I do is the way I think a lot of the Shetlanders do, is I do 2 hands. So I'll do Western in my right hand and continental in my left. So in order to do that, it prevents all sorts of tangling, provided you don't have a rogue pink yarn running around. I'll put the purple one, the color on that side. Let's get them untangled at first, because if you do it 2 in one hand, everything is going to get tangled. Whereas if you do one in 2 different hands, one in each hand, like I'm getting ready to show you, it won't tangle. So you sit down with your yarn untangled, one on the right, one on the left. You do, I'm having a devil of a time here. There we go. And there we go. Over here. Oh, God, that feels so much better. Okay, so now I can do this. And then that. Pick those two up, depending on whatever your pattern is, the chart that you're looking at. Okay? So there we are. Now, what I was talking to you earlier is, let's see if I can't pull a sweater up and show you, is that where that medallion is at the very beginning. Here's the cardigan version. Is that medallion at the very beginning here. There are 7 stitches in between here and there. So you're going to have to catch your yarn somewhere in those 7 stitches, but you're not going to stack them, right? You're not going to do them on this stitch every single time. You're going to catch them somewhere in here. And let me show you how to do that. There are 2 ways. So when I do two-handed, I put I put the background color in my right hand, the main color, the background color in my right hand, and I put the foreground color, the pattern color, in my left hand. Now, for most of the charts in this sweater, it's not going to matter either way because there is no clear background or foreground. But if you look at a pattern and you can clearly tell there's a background and a foreground, I would put the background in my right hand and the foreground in my left hand. Okay? So if I have a long run of the purple, like those 7 stitches, so I've done 2, and I'm doing 3, so I'm going to catch it on the 4th stitch. So you put the needle through the stitch. What you're trying to do is, if I made that 4th stitch now, that turquoise is just hanging out there and is going to be loose, make a long float, and that's not what you want. What you want to do is go around behind it so that you are trapping it. You see what I'm doing here? You're trapping it right there, and that will tack it down in between the purple and the body of the work. So in order to do that, you can do it this way, is that you can just twist it and come back, keep that over there, and twist that. So now it's, no, it didn't twist. Okay, just do it like this. And now it's, hello, there, all the way around. I don't do this very often. I guess it's all the way around like that, so you really twist it. That seems like too much of a twist. No, I guess that's what it is. You twist it like that, so you just lay it across like that, and then make the stitch. And so now that's caught. So that purple, that lavender, what's the name of that color? Is that aqua? The aqua that was coming from here is now attached to the back there. Okay, that's if you are not working two-handed. If you are working two-handed, you can do this like this. Just do a run up, and then put the needle through the stitch, roll that forward like that, go around behind it, make your stitch, undo it, and come forward, and now you've done the same thing. You've caught that turquoise is caught right there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I make a purple stitch. Now I've got another one. So 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do it on the 4th stitch. Just because I do, you don't have to do it there. You could do it, as I said, you want to vary it. So next time I would do it on the 5th stitch. Next round, I would do it on maybe the 5th, 6th or something. Go through, pull this forward, go around behind it, catch it, pull that back, and go forward like this. Another way to do that would be to just, instead of moving your finger, just roll your hand like that. Now you're pinching it here to hold it so it doesn't go anywhere, and then come around behind it and then go back like that. I've got plenty of plenty of ways to do that on a tutorial, on my tutorials, along with working here. So that's all that you need. That's the only trick you need to do on those first 17 rounds. Is anytime you have a long run of 7, then you need to catch that. As I said, I catch anything over 4, I will catch it. So, all right, what else do we need to talk about? As I said, if we don't, that's twisted because I did it the other way. So if you are, there's another way to do it like that. Well, I was going to show you when I got to the end here, if you're working with 2 circs, let's see if I can get all the way down here. I'll show you this one more time. 1, 2, 3. Let's do it on 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Stitch goes in like that. Roll it forward, go around. See how that goes over that, catches it, and then comes back, and then it's caught right there. So, and then as I get to the end of one of these needles, which would be the end of a side of a magic loop or the end of a DPN, one of the things I like to do, let's just get down there. One of the things I like to do, and I'm just knitting just to get to the end of this. If I was, let's back it up one, make my point here. If I'm coming along and all of this is purple, if 7 of my stitches in here, provided you don't split the yarn, hello, back it up, there we go. If you're coming to the end, if I did 4 stitches of the purple, I got 3 more to go, I switch my needles around to here, going on to the whatever these things are called, brass colored needles, gold needles. Turquoise in that hand, purple in this hand. Hello. And I've got 4 more stitches to go. Is it 3 or 4? 3 more. And I start here and I do 3 more stitches in the purple. If I then do a turquoise right there, you see what's going to happen? Is that purple, why can't I say the name of the color? That aqua is going to cut the corner like that. So what I like to do is, no matter how many stitches, I will anchor that, even if it's 1 or 2, I will catch that right before I make the turn. So if instead, let's back it up and catch it, and then you'll see the difference between the two. And that was an exaggerated, those 7 stitches, that's exaggerated. But, that same thing will kind of happen with that, it cutting the corner with the stranded yarn, the yarn that's stranded cutting the corner, even if you've got just 2 or 3. So I'll back up here. Pull that purple out of there. Okay, so now here we go again. We're getting ready to head for this corner. Okay, what I would do is, even if it's just the last stitch, I will do this, roll that forward, catch it, come back, do the last stitch, then change to my other needle, whether it's a DPN, whether it's the second, when you change sides for the magic loop, or whether it is 2 circs like this is, you would catch it there. And then on this one, I might even roll forward and do 1 more on that very first stitch. And then you see the back is doesn't have that the aqua is absolutely flat. It's not being drug across there. So the tension is much better. And that's something we need to talk about, is tension. There are a couple of ways of working tension to make sure, and that's something That's the catching long floats, starting new colors, and tension are like the three things that colorwork people are always asking about. And tensioning will happen. One of the things will happen with practice. That's one of the things it'll happen with. But it also will happen if you pull out your yarn like that, so that every so many inches or so, if you will just kind of pull it out, that straightens out those that floats in the back and helps with that tension. Another way of helping with tension is to work with wooden needles, not the slippery. These are really highly polished. These are wooden needles, but they're very highly polished. So it's better than these chrome ones, but the the wooden bamboo or the wooden birch ones, they will actually grab your stitches better and make them stay here better and not slide up and create a tension problem in the back. The other way to do it, which is kind of extreme, but I've seen people do it, is that they work inside out. So here's your circle, like this. If you would turn this all inside out, let's see if I can get everything back in here. I need to look at this without dropping stitches and there, wait a minute, let me get all these. That just dropped, pick back up again, because that was really stupid of me to do. There we go. All right. So if you turn your whole thing inside out, so the outside of your knitting is on the inside of your knitting, the wrong side. Here you go. The wrong side is on the outside of your circle. Okay? You got that? The wrong side is on the... Why is not that working? Oh, because that needs to be like that. Yes, okay. So that the wrong side, can you tell on this little bitty needle? I'm trying to figure out why it's doing that. There we go. So here's your circle. Here is the wrong side is facing on the outside. And so instead of knitting on the front side like we were doing of your circle, you're knitting on the back side. So what you would do, go away for just right now, is now you're knitting on the back side of the circle. And I just reversed that, so let me get that back to where it needs to be. There we go. There we go. So now you're knitting this way. You're still knitting, but you're knitting on the, it's kind of on the inside. It's on the back side of the circle because the rest of the circle is up front here. But the inside of the circle, or the yarn going around the inside of the circle, is going a slightly smaller circumference than that going around the outside, which will straighten those, stretch out those floats. So that's another way to work your tension, is to work on the inside. Now I obviously haven't set it up like that, and my needles are going all haywire and crazy sauce, but you get the idea. I should have done that some other way. Anyway, I'm going to turn it back because that's bothered me that way. Sorry. Now, let's see if I can't make it do right again. Yeah, all right. Let me check my piece of paper to see if there's anything else we need to talk about. Look at my notes here. Stretching tensions, decreases around did that. Catching floats, did that. Tangling the yarn dominance. Okay, I think I'm okay. Let's go back to the other camera and we'll talk about a couple of more things. But hopefully that helped. If it is, you need some other way of looking at it, I've got all sorts of tutorials. You can look at those, and those tutorials in conjunction with this tutorial should help you with Colorwork. If you have any questions, please get in touch. I'll say that 1,000,000 times. I love this so much that I want everybody to feel comfortable with it, and I've got lots of suggestions for things. So there you go. But one of the things I was going to say, that now that we've gotten bigger and you move on up, there is a decrease once you finish this this section right there, there's a decrease in here, just a pattern construction note. There's a decrease right there. After you do that decrease, before you start all this color work, there's a solid row of the, in this case, green going to the burgundy there. As you were starting that first round, the second round of this chart, you might have to do some adjusting. Because you want to get back to a multiple of 4, because everything from here on up is a multiple of 4. So you might want to, what was I trying to say? Hello. You might have to have an adjustment round, and that's what I call it. So make sure when you are looking at your pattern that you don't miss the paragraph that says adjustment round, ask me how I know. I'm working along on mine, and I came up and I was like, oh good, I finished that first chart, let's move to the second chart. And I did all the decreases and moved straight to the second chart, and I'm going, I have 2 extra stitches. Why do I have 2 extra stitches? That's not right, but oh well. And I checked other sizes and they didn't have 2 extra stitches, and I thought, well, that's weird. Why did I do that? Then I looked at the pattern further down and it says adjustment round. And on the rounds that I said that it didn't have 2 extra stitches, you didn't need to do any adjusting. But on the size I was choosing, you needed to have an adjustment where you decreased 2 stitches, and it got back to a multiple of 4. So be sure you don't make that mistake. I had to rip out a couple rounds actually. It was fun. So there's adjustment round here. I mean a decrease and adjustment round at that point, and then the second one is right up here, and then by that time you can be decreasing and doing a 2x2 pattern at the same time, and then the third one is up here around the neck to get the final into your neck. You're decreasing by 1/4 here, you're decreasing by 1/3 there, and you're decreasing by, weirdly enough, 2/5 here. So in 2/5, decreasing by 2/5 is knit 2 together, knit 2 together. So you have 5 stitches, you knit 2, you knit 1. Read the pattern, Brandon. You have 5 stitches, you knit 1, you knit 2 together, knit 2 together. So you end up with 5. You start out with 5, you end up with 3. So you have decreased 2/5 of your patterns to get around here. Now, one of the things you might want to do, and some people do, for this sweater and the other pullover sweater, I did not do this. For this cardigan I did because I wanted to try it, is that starting at about the shoulder, I just went back and forth and did a number of short rows, and I'm not good at short rows, but I did a number of short rows right across the back to bring the back neck up just a hair so that it does dip down a little further in the front than in the back. So just so you see how this does just a little bit in the front than in the back. So you can do that or not. There, as you wet block, you can pull this down and pull the back up as you wet block if you're working with wool, and that'll do fine too. You just got to remember it every time you block the sweater. But the short rows are fine too, and you just do a little wrap and turn back, wrap and turn back. I think I did it twice, maybe. Yeah, I think I did it twice. But if you're interested in that, get in touch, because I'll look and tell you exactly what it is. But you could, if you've done short rows, you can figure that out. It's basically you just reach a point here and go back and forth, across the back a little bit. All right. Next time, we're almost done, people. Next time we're going to talk about if you're working the cardigan, we're going to do steeking. If next time is pretty much for the cardigan people. We're going to cut open the steek in the front. We're going to talk about we're going to secure it with a crochet chain stitch up the front before we cut the cardigan. We are cutting the steek up the front. We're going to pick up stitches for the neck bands and stuff across the front, and then then we're going to talk about how you work in the buttonholes, because if you work in the buttonholes with the size if you did the exact length size, you shouldn't have any problems in the pattern. If you did not have the exact length size, decided to do shorter or longer, we need to talk about how you readjust the buttonholes, and I will talk about that in next episode. All right, so you have any questions whatsoever, please get in touch. I am Varian Brandon on Ravelry. I am vbran at brandonknittingdesigns.com. That's the email address. The website is brandonknittingdesigns.com. Instagram, I'm constantly there. I'm Varian Brandon on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Brandon Knitting Design. So it's one of the other, either place. So please get in touch if you have any questions. I'm hoping you're having fun. You'll have fun with that. And I'm hoping all of this Colorwork stuff will make you want to do even more of it because it's so much fun. So thanks, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.